On 31st of March 2019, their balance sheet showed a journal reserve. General reserve, see, general reserve is what? General reserve is a part of profit. It is a part of profit. And if it remain unused, unutilized, then we generally, this general reserve is generally distributed among the partners. If nothing is given the question in contrary to this, whenever just only general reserve is given in the question, then we generally distribute it among the partners. So in this question, it says that in the balance sheet we have a general reserve of 60,000. It was decided that in the future they will share the profit and loss in the ratio of 3:2. All right, so their future profit ratio is given. We need to pass the general entry for each of the following alternative cases. Firstly, it says that when general reserve is not to be shown in the new balance sheet, and when general reserve is to be shown in the new balance sheet. Now this is important. See, let me explain this. See, if we talk about the treatment of the general reserve depend upon how are we going to deal with the general reserve that is appearing in the book. That means in the balance sheet. That depends upon two factors. Treatment of general reserve. It depends upon two factors. Number one, whether partners wanted to partner want to show the general reserve in the future books of account as well. Wants to show in the future books of account means in the future balance sheet as well. Future books of account. Number one. This is case number one. Situation number one. Second situation could be partners don't want to show it in the books of account anymore. So there could be two possible situations, whether they are willing to continue to show the general reserve in the future books of account, or they do not want to show the general reserve in the future books of account. So depending upon that, we pass the general entry, right? And if you talk about the general reserve, sorry, the treatment of the general reserve, if partners are willing to show the value of the reserve in the future books of account as well, then in such a situation, treatment is done by passing the adjustment entry. For such a situation, we pass the adjustment entry if the partners is willing to show the general reserve in the future books of account as well. But if partners have decided to not continue the general reserve in the future, they do not want to show it in the future books of account, then we will be passing distribution entry. So there could be adjustment entry or the distribution entry for the general reserve depending upon the intention or the will of the partner, whether partners are willing to show it in the future books of account, or they do not want to show it in the future books of account. If they are not willing to show it in the future books of account, then the distribution entry will be done, and that will be, see, distribution entry basically mean we will distribute the general reserve among the partners, and this will be distributed among the partners in the old profit sharing ratio. And see, the general entry for this will be, what do? We simply, since general reserve is getting distributed among the partners, so we debit the general reserve account. We write it as general reserve account debit to partners capital account. If there are two partners like X and Y, so we'll credit the X partner capital account and Y partner capital account to partners capital account. Got it? So this is the journal entry for distribution of the general reserve, and we also need to write down the narration for this will be being general reserve distributed among the partners, distributed among partners in old profit sharing ratio. Old profit sharing ratio. But when it comes to the adjustment entry, for adjustment entry, we need to first of all determine the gaining and sacrificing shares of the partner. Based on the change in the PSR, we need to first of all find out who is gaining and who is sacrificing on account of reconstitution taking place on account of change in PSR. And whoever is gaining, whichever partner is gaining, that partner's capital account need to be debited. So we, in order to do the adjustment entry, we debit the gaining partner's capital account. We write it as gaining partner account will be debited. Partner's capital account debit to, we credit the sacrificing partner's capital account. Sacrificing partner's capital account. Partner's capital account. And we write down the relation as being general reserve adjusted. Got it? So this is how the general reserve is treated depending upon the situation. I hope this point is clear. Please confirm if it is clear or not.
Yes, sir.
It is clear for Prerna as well.
Yes, sir.
Shifa, is it clear to you as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So now please note this down quickly so that we can start with the question. Please note this. And in this question, both the entries are required. See, the question is saying us, firstly, we need to treat the general reserve considering that it is partners have decided not to show it in the future books of account in the new balance sheet. And situation number 2 says that general reserve is to be shown in the new balance sheet. So for the first, we will do the distribution entry, and for the second, we will do the adjustment entry. Done?
Yes, sir.
Shifa, done?
So one second.
Done? Shall we start with the question?
Yes, sir. Done. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's quickly start with question. Question 81, we already read this question. We need to just pass the general entry considering The situation one when general reserve is not to be shown in the new balance sheet. So the journal entry for this will be. Guys, do you want to pass the general entry for both the cases? I'm just waiting for you to pass the general entry. Just solve both the cases and let me know the answer. Will you be able to do that, Shifa and Prerna?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, just give it a try. See, first of all, in this question, we should determine the sacrificing and gaining shares of the partner, right? Because in order to treat the situation number second, case two, we should have idea about the gaining and sacrificing shares of the partner. Only then we will be able to pass the journal entry. So for that, we will prepare a working note. So by preparing a working note, we will try to determine the Amar and Akhar's gaining and sacrificing. So for that purpose, you will subtract the old PSR out of the new PSR. New profit sharing ratio for both the partners 3/5 and 2/5, and we will subtract 2/3 and 1/3 from their new profit sharing ratio. Now we will determine the values. It will be 15, 6, 9 minus 10. That will give us minus 1 by 15. And this will give us 6, 5, so 1, 5, 15. But that means Amar is gaining, Amar is sacrificing, since Amar's account, Amar is getting an Amar's proportion of share is a negative. That means he is sacrificing, and Akhar will be gaining since his proportion of share is in positive value gain. Right. Now we'll treat the both the cases. So let's first of all talk about case one. In case one, we need to consider that general reserve is not to be shown in the balance sheet. So when it is not to be shown in the balance sheet, that means we will simply distribute it among the partners. When general reserve not to be shown in new balance sheet, right? So the general entry for this is, we will pass the distribution general entry, and that is general reserve account debit, general reserve account debit to who are the partners? Amar and Akhar. Partners capital account. Amar's capital account to Akhar's capital account. So general reserve will be debited by 60,000. That is already given in the question. And we will distribute this amount in the old PSR among the partners. So distributing
40,000 and 20,000.
just a minute. General reserve among partners. Yeah, could you please repeat the values?
40,000. 40,000 and 20,000.
40,000 and 20,000 in the old PSR, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the case number 2. I hope you already did this. Case number 2. In case 2, question is requiring us to treat the general reserve, considering that it is not to be distributed among the partners, considering that it is shown in the new balance sheet. So when general reserve is to be shown in the new balance sheet, when general reserve to be shown in new balance sheet, then we need to do the adjustment entry. And adjustment entry is gaining partners capital account debit gaining partners capital account debit to sacrificing partner. So here in our example, our question, who is the gaining partner? Gaining partner is Akhar and sacrificing is Amar. So I'll write down Akhar's capital account. Akhar's capital account will be debited to, since Amar is gaining, so Amar's capital account. And the value is, first of all, 60,000, and Akhar's gaining ratio is 1 by 15, right? So this will be debited by 4,000, and Amar's account will be credited by 4,000. And we'll write down the narration as being adjustment of general reserve between partners. I hope both these cases are clear to both of you. Okay,
Yes,
Zainab
sir.
is also there. Zainab, you understand both
Yes,
these
sir.
cases? Since you, I think you joined late, na? All right, so Shifa, you understand this? Shifa,
Yes, sir.
understood, na? Okay. All right, now let's talk about the goodwill. We have covered topics such as investment fluctuation reserve, treatment of the IFR, treatment of workman compensation reserve, treatment of the general reserve. Now we'll talk about the treatment of goodwill in case of reconstitution. We already covered a topic by the name of goodwill, wherein we were talking about the valuation of goodwill. Now this is different. Here we will talk about the treatment of the goodwill. Now see, treatment of the goodwill depends upon, it also depends upon the type of goodwill. I think I have already explained this previously as well while covering the goodwill. I've told you that there are two types of goodwill, if you are able to recall, right? There are two types of goodwill. One is the purchase goodwill, and then there is the self-valued goodwill. You are able to recall that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if we talk about the types of goodwill, there are two types of goodwill, and the treatment of the goodwill depends upon the nature of goodwill, the type of goodwill, right? So see, broadly classifying the goodwill, we can classify it into two broad categories. Number one is the purchased goodwill, obviously, purchased goodwill. So what do you mean by purchased goodwill? See, whenever goodwill appears in the books of account, that means goodwill, when it appears in the balance sheet, that is considered as the purchased goodwill. And goodwill that appears out of the balance sheet. And whenever question tells you that goodwill of the firm is valued at some specific price, value, that is considered as the self-valued goodwill. So goodwill which is self-valued, never shown under the balance sheet. Only the purchase goodwill will be written under the balance sheet. So goodwill, whenever you are finding the goodwill out of the balance sheet, it is unless and until it is specifically mentioned that it is the purchase goodwill, always assume that it is the self-valued goodwill, right? So there are two types of goodwill, self-valued and the purchase goodwill. And the treatment depends upon the type, right? So we will be talking about the treatment of goodwill. Treatment of how goodwill should be treated. So when we talk about the purchase goodwill, the treatment of the purchase goodwill, treatment is very simple. As far as the purchase goodwill is concerned, as per rules of accounting, purchase goodwill need to be written off. Whenever a goodwill is appearing in the balance sheet, that is a purchase goodwill, right? And whenever purchase goodwill need to be treated, what kind of treatment will be done in that case? We need to write off the goodwill. So purchase goodwill is always written off. Written off means it should be written off from the books of account. Now see, goodwill is an asset. It is an intangible asset, right? So whenever asset is reducing or we are writing off the asset, it is a kind of loss. Whenever you will write off the goodwill from the books of account, it is kind of loss, and this loss has to be borne by the old partners only. Old partners only, right? And that too in the old profit sharing ratio. But when we talk about the self-valued goodwill, for the self-valued goodwill, the treatment is to be done by passing the adjustment entry. Adjustment is required. Adjustment will be done. So when it comes to the purchase goodwill, written off, it has to be written off. When it comes to the self-valued goodwill, it need to be adjusted. Adjustment is required. Right? Is it clear? Sorry, all of you. Is it clear? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when we talk about the purchase goodwill, since it is needed to be written off, na, so we need to pass the write-off entry. We need to write down the writing off entry. So the journal entry in this case will be writing of entry will be done, and write off journal entry is simple. The write off the goodwill from the books of account, the journal entry will be, since I told you that goodwill is an asset, and goodwill is, whenever goodwill is written off, that means goodwill is reducing. Whenever goodwill reduces, whenever asset is reducing, we need to credit the asset account, right? And the loss of this has to be borne by the old partners. So we tend to debit their account. The loss has to be transferred to the existing partners capital account. So we debit the old partners capital account. We write it as partners capital account debit, partners capital account debit. Obviously the old partners, not the new partner. Partners capital account debit to goodwill account. Got it? Is this clear? This is the general entry for writing of the purchase goodwill. And we'll write down the narration as well. We'll write it as being goodwill written off. Okay. Now when it comes to the self-valued goodwill need to be adjusted, and we need to pass the adjustment entry. Adjustment entry is required under that category, under that situation. And the adjustment entry for this will be, as we did the adjustment entry previously in case of journal reserve, we will do the same journal entry in this case as well. We will debit the cleaning partners capital account. Whenever we need to do the adjustment entry, we do the same journal entry every time at every place. Whenever adjustment entry is required, same entry is done. Gaining partners capital account debit to sacrificing partners capital account. Always remember that. Gaining partners capital account debit to sacrificing partners capital account. All right. Both of you, will you be able to remember this?
Yeah.
Being goodwill adjusted. You guys are writing this, na? Please note this down quickly.
Yes,
so that we can start the question. Please note this down. Done.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So see, we'll start with question number 82, which says that there are three partners X, Y, and Z who were sharing the profit and losses in the ratio of 5:3:2. Now they have decided to share the profits and losses equally. On the date of okay, goodwill on that date, goodwill appears in the book at 12,000. Now see, it says that goodwill appears in the book. That means goodwill appears in the book means goodwill is appearing in the balance sheet at 12,000. So this is the, see, whenever goodwill appears in the book, that always assume that this is the purchase goodwill. This is the purchased goodwill. And if it is a purchase goodwill, we need to write it off. But it was revalued at 30,000. Now see, same goodwill is being revalued at 30,000. So we have two values of the goodwill. One is the book value and one is the revalued value of the goodwill. So this 30,000 is considered to be the self-valued goodwill, right? This will be considered as self-valued goodwill, and 12,000 will be treated as the purchase goodwill. The treatment of both the values will be done, and but the treatment will be done differently depending upon, since the 12,000 is appearing in the book, the treatment will be done as per the purchase goodwill, and since we have revalued the goodwill, so this the treatment of this will be done as per the self-valued goodwill. Got it? Question is asking us to pass the journal entries if goodwill will not appear in the book. Goodwill is not to be appeared in the book. That means if goodwill is not appearing in the book, what does this mean? See, this point does not hold any relevance. This is not important for us anymore, since it is already stated. See, the treatment of the goodwill depends upon the nature of goodwill. It does not depend upon the whether it is to be shown in the books of account or not. So the last statement does not hold any importance for us, because the treatment of goodwill does not depend upon whether it is to be shown in the books of account or not, but rather the treatment of the goodwill depends upon the nature or the type of goodwill, whether it is the self-valued goodwill or the purchase goodwill. I hope I'm clear to all of you. Is it clear, everybody? Shall we start with the solution? Guys, please confirm now quickly.
Yes, sir.
And no one is responding in the session today. Everybody is so
Yes,
calm
sir.
and okay. All right, so let's continue with the solution. Solution to this question is, first of all, we'll pass the general entry for the treatment of the purchase goodwill, the goodwill appearing in the book. So we'll write down treatment of goodwill. I want you to write this down along with me. Treatment of goodwill appearing in the book. Journal entry for this will be, because it is appearing in the book, so we need to write it off, right? We will be passing the writing of journal entry. So the journal entry for this is, the existing partner's account need to be debited. X capital account debit. Y's capital account will also be debited. Z's capital account will also be debited. Right? And to goodwill account. Right? And the value will be, value was the purchase goodwill, or the goodwill that was appearing in the book, was 12,000. This has to be transferred to the all the partners in the old PSR, and we need to write down the narration as well. We will write down, being goodwill purchased goodwill written. Right? And the value will be, what is the ratio? Ratio is 5:3:2. Old ratio was 5:3:2. See, old ratio was 5:3:2. So that means 12,000 into 5 by 10, right? So that means 6,000 for X, then 3,600 for Y, and 2,400 for Z. Is it clear? Is it clear, everybody? Guys, am I audible to all of you properly or not? Okay. Then we need to do the treatment of goodwill, treatment of self-valued goodwill, or you can also call it revalued goodwill. Treatment of revalued goodwill will be done differently. For that, we need to first of all determine the gaining and sacrificing shares of the partners, right? So for that, we will have to prepare an extra working note. Calculation of gaining and sacrificing shares of partner. And for that, we will apply this formula: new profit sharing ratio minus the old profit sharing. And the name of the partners are X, Y, and Z. X, Y, and Z, right? Their new profit sharing ratio is, tell me, new profit sharing ratio is given in the question that now, from now onward, they will be sharing the profit and losses equally. Everybody is able to see that equally. So that means the new profit sharing ratio is 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3 for everyone. 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. But the old profit sharing ratio was different. Old profit sharing ratio was 5:3:2. So that means earlier X was sharing 5/10, 3/10, and 2/10 for Z. And based on it, we will be able to determine the gaining and sacrificing shares of the partner. So this will be taking the LCM of the nominator. We will get 30. 10 minus 15. That means minus 5/30. Since X is getting the negative value, negative proportion of share, that means he must be sacrificed. All this also calculate the Y's proportion of share. So 30, 10 minus 9, he's getting the positive value 1/30. That means Y must be gaining. Right. And Z, this will be 30, 10 minus 6. That means 4/10, 4/30. Sorry. That also means that shows that Z is also gaining. Right, everybody? Everybody understood this calculation?
Yes, sir.
Note this down quickly so that we can pass the journal entry.
Done, sir.
Done. Okay, now we'll pass the general entry, and the general entry will be, since Y and Z are gaining and X is sacrificing, so the general entry for this will be Y's capital account debit, Z's capital account debit, to X capital account, right? And the value of the goodwill was 30,000, na? 30,000. So the gaining share for Y was 4/30. We can also write this as okay, anyways, so 5/30, 4/30. So 4/30 means 4,000 for Y, right? Is it clear, everyone? Then
Yes, sir.
Then for Y, this will be 3,000. No, the 1000 and 5000. Is it clear? Please confirm yes or no. We'll write down
Yes,
the
sir, it's
duration.
clear.
It's clear. So write down the duration as being revalued goodwill. Revalued goodwill adjusted in gaining and sacrificing ratio or shares. All right, please note this down quickly and tell me whenever you are done so that we can move to the next question. And also tell me if anyone have any kind of doubt. Just tell me whenever you are done so that we can move to the next question.
So done.
Done, sir.
All right, so coming on to the next question. Question number 83.
Sir, in previous question, why is capital account will be debit of the 1000?
Just a minute. The previous question, why capital account will be debited by 1000?
Yeah,
Let me
and
check.
instead of 4000.
Just a minute. By 1 by 30 and Z goes 4 by 30. Sorry. Make the correction, everyone. 1000 and 4000. Sorry. Okay, now let's move to the next question. This one is also simple. It says that there are 3 partners again. Their profit sharing ratio is same, 5:3:2. Now they have decided to share the profit and losses equally. With effect from 1st of April 2020, the partnership provides that in the event of any change in the PSR, goodwill is to be revalued at goodwill is to be valued at 2 years purchase of the average profit of the preceding 5 years. The profit and loss of the preceding 5 years are given. Okay, so this time the goodwill is not given in the question, right? Instead, question is asking us to calculate the goodwill and then do the treatment for the goodwill. We are required to calculate goodwill number 1 and pass the journal entry. But I hope the question is clear. Everybody,
Sir, is it self-valued?
is it? Sorry,
Is it self-valued or purchased?
you tell me whether this will be considered as the self-valued goodwill or the purchase goodwill.
Self-valued?
Yes, we see whenever the question specifically mentions that this statement is given, goodwill appearing in the book. If it is written, then only you will treat the goodwill as as the purchase goodwill. Number 1. Number 2, if goodwill is appearing in the balance sheet will be given in the question. And if there in the balance sheet on the asset side, if you are able to locate the goodwill written over there, then this will also be this will also mean that that is the purchase goodwill. All right. So there are two situations, two conditions. Number 1, if it is the goodwill, if it is the purchase goodwill, the question will specifically mention that. How it will mention? It will say that goodwill is appearing in the book. Number 1. Number 2, the second method to identify whether the goodwill is the purchase goodwill or not, you will look for the goodwill in the balance sheet. Right. Now in this question, the balance sheet is not given. Number 1. So the first condition is not applicable. Second thing, question also does not tells us that goodwill is appearing in the book. In fact, question is telling us to value the goodwill. That means if question is asking us to value the goodwill, that automatically simply means that it must be the self-valued goodwill only, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So now see in this question we have the profit of the last 5 years are given. In the year 2016, we made a profit of 70, then 85, then 45, then 35,000. And in the year 2020, we made a loss of 10,000. Considering all these values, we need to first of all find out the goodwill and then accordingly do the general entry. General entry will be done for as assuming that it is the self-valued goodwill. All right. So just tell me whether you will be able to find out the goodwill for this question or not. Since we already covered a topic based on the valuation of goodwill. Now, and anyone of you please, Shifa, could you please tell me which method of the valuation of goodwill will be applicable in this question?
Average profit method.
Yes, perfect. Prerna, are you able to recall the average profit method of the goodwill? You are able to recall the valuation of goodwill by the average profit method? Just tell me yes or no.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Zainab, you are able to recall as well? Zainab?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, then everyone please find out the goodwill of this question for this question and then accordingly pass the general entry. I'm waiting for you to finish. Just calculate the value of the goodwill and then pass the general entry. Let me know the answer. You will have to find out the gaining and sacrificing shares of the partner as well before passing the general entry. But since you can see the old PSR and the new PSR is same as it was in the previous question. So instead of calculating it, you can just directly take the value from the previous question. Right? We just calculated the gaining and sacrificing shares of the partner in the previous question, considering considering the same values. So when you will calculate the gaining and sacrificing ratio in this question, you will get the same answer. So you can directly pick up the value from the previous solution instead of calculating it now. Okay, I'm waiting for you to finish. Just quickly finish it and let me know the answer.
Oh yes, I'm done.
Done, everybody? Shifa, Prerna, Zainab.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Shifa, just tell me the value of goodwill you have got.
90,000.
90.
Yeah.
Okay, Prerna, you are getting the same answer.
Yes, sir, 90,000.
90,000. Okay. Zainab, you are getting the same answer.
Yes, sir. It's about 90,000.
Okay. Then you guys will pass the journal entry for this question now. Since you got the value of the goodwill, you can simply pass the journal entry, considering the gaining and sacrificing shares of the partner. Right, everyone? Shifa, could you please tell me the journal entry you have done?
Y's capital account debit, Z's capital account debit to X's capital account.
Yeah.
And amounts are 3,000, 12,000, and 15,000.
All right, that's correct. Prerna, you get the same answer. Prerna, you have got the same answer.
Yes.
All right, guys. So this is it. Since all of you have done this question correctly, we can move to the next question. And I'm giving you this question as homework. Please take the screenshot of this question. Question number 84. It says Meeta and Gopal Farhan were partners sharing PSR in the ratio of 3:2:1. Their new PSR is 5:3:2. Balance sheet is showing the following balances. In the balance sheet, we have deferred advertisement expense. I must have already discussed this point earlier with you that deferred advertisement expense is a kind of loss. You have to treat this as a loss. Just like general reserve is a profit, deferred advertisement expense is a kind of loss. So deferred advertisement expenditure is being shown in the balance sheet. Contingency reserve is here 9,000. Contingency reserve is just like the reserve, general reserve, right? And if no adjustment is given in the question, we will simply distribute it among the partner, considering it as a profit. It will be treated as a profit. Then goodwill of the firm was valued at. So that means this is the valued goodwill, 4,80,000. Now see, goodwill was valued at rupees 4,80,000. This is the goodwill of the firm. We need to pass the journal entry in the question for the above transaction. All right. I'm presuming that you are finding this question easy, right? I hoping that you will be able to solve this question. So I'm giving you this question as homework.
Wait, so
Anybody
sir,
having
should we write off the goodwill?
No. Since it is the valued goodwill, na? Valued goodwill
Okay.
is to be distributed. Sorry, adjusted among the partners. Only see the balance sheet showed the deferred advertisement expenditure. Does not appear in the books of account. This does not appear in the balance sheet. Goodwill is the valued goodwill. All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm sure that you must have taken this screenshot. I have no other question to give you as homework. We will be discussing about the revaluation account in the next class. Okay. We will talk about. Have we discussed the revaluation with you already? We have already
Oh, no,
discussed the.
sir.
No. With some new topics.